Hello, everybody. Welcome to Monday Morning Bucket List. This is Paul Collins, along with my wife, my co-host, Nancy. We're glad to be with you again on July 5th, 2021. We dated the program, so if you see it later, you'll know the context in which it is offered. We are live, and we're very thankful for social media groups and all the various venues that manage to carry this broadcast. Anyway, we'll be with you for the next 40, 45 minutes thereabouts. And we'll talk about some things that are relative to people, Nancy, actually 40 and beyond, not just 50, but 40 and beyond.
I know.
Because
I'm always pushing the button down
well, when
age-wise.
when I do my due diligence, as they say, in my research, I find out that people who are thinking about retiring, they need to start about age 40, and this is nothing new.
That's right.
Back in the late 70s, I was a little past 40, and I was able to join an organization for senior citizens and get the benefits, some of the benefits. So what I'm saying to you today is we're going to be addressing some issues that will be relevant to you and your loved ones who are 40 and beyond. So hang on to this program. Remember the time, the date, and go online, axmediagroup.com. That's ACTS, axmediagroup.com. And it'll be available there from time to time. And tell the folks who need to know these things
Like your
about the program.
kids and grandkids and so forth and so forth.
Well, not only kids and grandkids, but tell the folks that are in your family that are 40 and beyond.
That's right.
And spread the word.
Mhm.
And because some of the things we have talked about in the past, the history of the Internal Revenue Service in the United States of America, along with the history of the income tax. And we've talked about Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, nursing homes, retirement homes, etc. And all of this is very relevant. Today, we will pinpoint some things, but in order to do that, I have to should tell you, that I've been in communication by email with an old friend of mine who's considerably younger than I am. He's in his 70s, and he's very concerned about his older sister, who's just a little younger than I am, and she's now a widow. And he's since she lives several hundred miles away from him, he's very concerned about her well-being, and he along with other family members and one or two there trying to make arrangements that this week she would go into assisted living. I've been in touch with him by email, been in touch with her by phone because we're old friends, and had a great visit with her last evening. Discovered that she's not at all fond of the idea of going into assisted living, even though she toured the facility and said it was very nice. She described it, that it had an entrance foyer, and then just past that, there was a little kitchen, and there was a nice big living room, and there was a nice bedroom. There was a walk-in closet, and of course, bathroom facilities. There was a dining area just off the kitchen. So it's a one-bedroom, really a large one-bedroom apartment, but it's still not home. And she is reluctant to give up her home. Now, these are things that will be faced by a lot of people, either by you immediately or someone you know and love in the near future, or maybe facing now. So how do you handle that? Well, I visited with her on the phone, and I can't say that I had any great answers, except I was able to, as a non-family member, present to her some of the positives about assisted living based on the experiences we've had in our family and based on the experiences of others. Like my first secretary that I ever had in ministry, first secretary in my life, she lives in assisted living, and her apartment sounds very much like the one that was described to me on the phone. And she's made new friends, new relationships. And when the COVID hit and everyone was shut in, the folks who were on lockdown in assisted living, they got along very nicely it was their relatives who couldn't come in to see them who
Mhm.
suffered. But otherwise, they had community. They were
Uh-huh.
better off than if they were on shutdown in a home by themselves.
Exactly.
So there are lots of positives about assisted living. There, like anything else, there could be some negatives, but the positives, if you have the need, far outweigh the negatives.
Mhm.
So I wanted to report that. Now, one of the things that Nancy discovered doing geriatric nursing for 32 years, she's now been retired from it 11 years. Her entire nursing career was in a nursing home.
Mhm.
She was a charge nurse. She was a nurse supervisor. She was director of nursing. And for many years, she was a care plan coordinator. So, full spectrum of work as a nurse in a nursing home facility that also had assisted living and
Yeah.
residential care and retirement homes, et cetera, a large complex. One of the things that was very evident a number of years ago was that some of the residents could misuse their credit cards.
Oh boy, now.
And they were in charge of their own business, and they watched a lot of television. They watched a lot of what was supposed to be Christian programming and religious programming, I'll put it that way, and other matters. So quite often they would really put their credit cards to use, not
Mhm.
only making donations, not just to religious groups, but to various charities that come on. TV's full of them, you know. And then also some would get on these shopping channels. I had a good friend who talked with me about his wife who was living at home, still lives at home, even though he's now deceased. And he had a major problem with her in that she watched these shopping channels and made purchases of all kinds of things they did not need and would run up credit card debt. So, senior citizens, watch out for your credit cards. And those of you who are 40 and beyond, you watch them because
Mhm.
that kind of stuff can creep up on you.
Oh yeah.
I'm pleased to say that Nancy and I have no credit card debt. We use credit cards, but we literally use them as a check. And then when the bill comes in, we pay it. That way we have on our computer and in hard copy a record of our spending. So we use them for record keeping and convenience, and the fact that we're now increasingly in a so-called cashless society. It is rare to go through a checkout lane at a supermarket and see anybody write a check. It's even more rare to see somebody use currency to pay their bill. I noticed the other day, Nancy, we were in a supermarket. They had a notice there where by the credit card machine, if you use cash, have correct change because they did not have change to make change. People don't.
They're probably if somebody had enough money, paper money, and then they had change, probably the business wouldn't mind if you were 5 cents over if you didn't have a nickel, but you had a dime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Well, I guess you
sure.
just lost
Well,
5 cents.
Coins are becoming scarce, and they're even difficult to get at the bank. That's for sure. We were with some people the other day in a big box store, and he fumbling around couldn't find his credit card for that store, and so he started paying in cash. And I watched what a struggle it was for him to dig around his wallet and find currency and then change. He didn't have change, and it was odd money that, and the big box store didn't have change, so they compromised and they worked it out. But then he found his credit card. So we're in a time when credit card usage is with us. It's probably here to stay in one form or another, in spite of digital currency and all these things. So if you or people in your family, as 40 years old and older, have run up credit card debt, I'm going to give you some ideas here so that when you see people who are younger than you who have already incurred unspeakable credit card debt, or you want to help them avoid it, here's some hints for you. And this comes from a magazine that I get monthly because when I was 40 years old, I joined an organization for senior citizens. Here's 4 strategies that can help ease the burden of your credit card and those of your loved ones. First of all, there is such a thing as transferring your balance. There are some 0-rate introductory balance transfer offers on cards, and this was kind of scarce in 2020, but more of them are arriving now. And this is from a lady who's a credit cards expert at the personal finance website, and I won't tell what that is, but there is a personal finance website. These cards typically charge as much as 5% of the transferred balance up front. So this works only if you can get an introductory deal long enough for you to make a big dent in your balance. So here's the thing. When you get these offers in the mail about balance transfer cards, you want to do your due diligence, check them out carefully, read the fine print, and then go online and research. And you can do this through some websites like NerdWallet, nerdwallet.com, etc. There's all kinds of websites. Take the time. Take the time. Otherwise, they take your money.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, time is something that you can invest that will save you money. So watch your transfer balance offers. You can also call a credit card company and ask for a break. Now, I did this a number of years ago on behalf of a relative of mine, and some of the credit card companies would give a break. They would lower the interest rate, or they would overlook a payment, whatever. One credit card company, they cut nobody any slack at all because they offer money back for purchases that you make over a period of time, and therefore they don't give you that leeway. But it doesn't hurt to ask for a break. Get on the phone, call them. Nancy, I do this. This is on a different topic. I do this with our television service.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're good at that.
I call our TV provider, a satellite provider, about every 6 months and say, I've been a customer for years and years and years. I've always paid the bill, and we like your service. But I get all kinds of offers, which we do, from other satellite providers, TV providers, wanting us to change. And I don't want to change. I like your service, but I'm retired, senior citizen, and it's important that I get the best deal. I always get a better deal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for the next 6 months, I get a better deal. Doesn't hurt to ask. Take the time and save money. If you invest time, you can save money on credit cards, on TV services. Another thing that people can do, which only makes sense if you have good credit and if you have the right kind of income, etc. But credit card interest rates are very high. You know that. I don't have to go into it, but it varies from card to card. But they're very high, much higher than bank rates. So if you have good credit and you have a good relationship with your local banker, you might consider getting a personal loan at a very low interest rate and pay off those high interest rate credit cards and then use them like a check from then on. Don't allow a balance to build up. The other thing you can do, which I highly recommend, is you get with somebody who knows what they're doing and put together a workout plan so they can, you have to be willing to expose your finances. So be careful who you expose your finances to.
Mm-hmm.
But you find a reliable person and you just lay it out and say, here's what I owe here, 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 and here. here's my income. It comes from here, 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 and here. Here's my monthly expenses. So this means you have to know what you're spending your money on, and you have to log it. You have to keep a log, a detailed log. It's worth the time and the effort, folks. If you don't manage your money, somebody else will, which means you end up being managed.
They're on the, you might say they're on the short end.
You're coming up on the short end if
That's
you
right.
don't take care of your business.
That's right.
So find a reliable person, lay it all out, and if they ask you questions, answer the questions honestly. And then they'll be able to give you a workout plan to get you out of credit card debt. Okay, that was one of the topics I wanted to touch on today, Nancy. But I'm be jumping around today. I have so much material. Please go to axmediagroup.com and make certain you know how to navigate that and stay in touch with this program. You can email me through the Axe Media Group website. They'll get the message to me, and I'll connect with you, and I'll tell you my resources and material and so forth. But anyway, backing up now to the subject of Social Security. Here's an article that's too good to pass up. There's a woman who's widowed after a 29-year marriage. Now, that's not many years. And she's turning 60. And she said, I plan to wait until full retirement age to claim Social Security on my own record. Can I apply for survival? Now, that's not spousal benefits, survivor benefits. Oh, he's a man under my wife's account without affecting my own benefits. And this is a man. And the answer is from the expert, yes, you can, starting at 60, and that would be a good strategy for you. You would collect a reduced survivor benefit because you're below your full retirement age, which nowadays is 67. But that wouldn't stop you from continuing to build your own benefit. You could even wait until age 70 to keep building your own benefit before you switch. So here's a case where a man is widowed and he's able to draw a reduced benefit, Social Security, on his deceased wife's benefits, and he can then continue to work, build his own benefits, and so forth. This is worth looking at. If you have questions about this, email me through axmediagroup.com, and I will direct you to the person who's the expert in this field to tell you about it. Here's another one. Here's a man who says, my wife and I put money in our grandchildren's 529 plans, giving us a state benefit for our contributions. Now, here's a man and his wife putting money in a special category for their grandchildren, and they get a state tax benefit. So this depends on what state you live in, etc. But don't overlook these little nuggets. Might be helpful to you. It says, should we keep at it and continue putting money in there? Will those funds reduce their financial aid? They're thinking about going to see, it's a college fund. And this answer person says, I get this question a lot. So, and the answer person is a grandmother. She says, as a grandma, I still think 529s are the way to go. That is, investing in your grandchildren's education. The tax savings are big and the aid impact is small. So you get huge tax benefits as compared to how much it may distract from the grandchild's student aid. It goes on to say, those accounts will grow tax-free and stay tax-free when the kids use the money. And if aid formulas are similar to today's, your grandkids' aid will mostly be loans, not grants or scholarships anyway. So here's another thing. You're a grandparent, you're wanting to help your grandchild, you want tax benefits, go online, Axe Media Group, contact me through the website. I'll give you the reference to this. You can get the details. Anyway, those are just some hints that I thought would be helpful at this point in time. Now, back to another angle for senior citizens, Nancy. As a senior citizen, I know the answer, but you can tell our audience. do you look for ways to save money?
Boy, now I do.
Tell us about it.
Oh, I will say this. Way back in the 50s and probably the very, very, very early 60s, my mom and dad, they paid for everything. It was always cash. And everything that I had was new: clothes, purses, coats, everything. Well, I've got a coat in my closet that is, let me think, Jesus, 60 years old.
And it's good as new and beautiful,
Yes,
but it was built to last.
that's right.
Now, this is
Now,
a lady's formal coat with
yes,
fur collar.
yes.
Yeah.
Everything, and I found out, this is so awesome. Ooh, I go I go to thrift stores, and that's where I get my clothes. And I can get,
That's what you do now.
yes,
That's not what your folks did.
no. And I do now for the last 35, 40 years. I've gotten all my clothes from thrift stores. And what's awesome is you can have pennies on the dollar, buy a Talbot sweater or a Talbot top or anything Talbot. And I don't know what those pieces cost individually, but I know that I'm not spending that money. I'm going to the thrift stores. And thank you, Jesus, I also go to, you might say, the so-called grocery store that's really a thrift store, in that they have
It's
ma-
surplus.
it's surplus, grocery surplus. Yeah. You know, the scratch, dent, mashed, that doesn't bother me any.
Some of it's not even that, though. Some of it is just
No,
where they were overstocked.
yes.
Nancy, I want to interject here that as men, the men watching, we don't know a Talbot from a Talbot. When you that's a brand name that
Yeah.
ladies are familiar with.
Oh, yes.
And I remember a young friend of ours, a young by our standards, young woman. She's probably 55 years old now, but a number of years ago, you introduced her to thrift stores. Now, she had not known about them. She'd always been going to the big name ladies stores buying stuff. In fact, she had worked part time in a store that sold ladies' purses for hundreds of dollars each.
Mhm.
And so when you introduced her to the thrift stores, she would usually spend the night with us. And when she'd come in with all this stuff that she'd buy on the thrift store rounds with you, she'd be taking stuff out, and she'd tell me, I wrote it down, what she paid for it. And over here, she'd look at the brand and everything. She said, in the store, this would be over here, this price. And we would total those up. It was really interesting. She was amazed. She would spend, and she would have bags of stuff. She was really into this. She might have spent $30. And over here, where in a store, this would have cost hundreds of dollars, name brand.
Yes.
So men, we don't know Talbot from Talbot, but the ladies do. But we don't know Coach purse from anybody else's purse, but the ladies do.
Yeah.
So, and then with the groceries, you do have to watch dates if you are.
Yes, Best Buy dates.
Best Buy dates, that sort of thing. But again, it's worth taking the time.
Oh, yes.
Invest the time and save the money.
Mm-hmm.
Give one example of something that you purchased recently in a grocery surplus place.
Oh, okay. Let me think a minute. Oh, I bought a can. Oh, in fact, I bought 3 cans of Progresso red kidney beans. They were only 49 cents a can. The cans were great. In fact, they're still in date.
And that's a name brand. That's an expensive brand.
Yes, it is.
And how much would they be in the grocery store ordinarily?
Oh, it might be $1.50 or $2.
Okay, we rest our case. That's just, now there are other bargains bigger than that, more significant than that.
Yes.
Anyway, if you're wanting to save money, that's one way to do it as a senior. And believe me, we need to, because retirement income does not increase anywhere near the pace of inflation. Last week, I pointed out that our grocery bill is 25% higher than it was last year at this time, and fuel costs for the car are up 47% as opposed to last year. And not only that, but real estate taxes have gone up. Now, this past week, in fact, this last Friday, we had a sit-down session with our insurance agent that handles our vehicle insurance and our homeowners insurance. Because on the one hand, real estate prices have gone up. Price of houses gone up. We all know that. And those people who are selling houses, they love it.
Mhm.
The people who are buying a house may not love it so much, but they forget there are some of us who are senior citizens. We own our homes, and even we're not ready to get out of them. We're not ready to move. The price and the value of our home has gone way up. Guess what? We have to increase the insurance coverage.
Mhm.
So we made a trip to our insurance guy Friday, had a sit down with him, and increased the coverage on our home, which is costing us about another $55 a month insurance. Figure that out over a year. Now, there's another thing that can raise real estate insurance costs, and that is if you live in an area where they've had a lot of, we'll say, if you live in an area where they have wildfires and many homes have been destroyed, or an area that floods and many homes destroyed, area where hurricanes have destroyed homes or tornadoes, etc., over a period after a little while, insurance rates for those areas creep up. So that's one of the reasons. It's not just all political, but that's another reason why we're seeing a migration of people from certain areas of the country to other areas. We happen to be, excuse me, living in an area now which the latest statistics show is an area that people are moving into from the Northeast and from the West and the Northwest, mostly the West and the Northeast, moving in to this area because of a number of factors: cost of living,
Mhm.
the weather, believe it or not, even climate change, whatever you want to call it, is causing people to come this direction because the weather, interestingly enough, is becoming more stable, more dependable than in other parts of the country. And we used to say that if you live in the Ozarks of Missouri, or in Springfield, Missouri, which I call Springburg, USA, and you don't like the weather, wait around, it'll change tomorrow. Well, that's still sort of true, but the changes are generally not as extreme.
Mm-mm.
Therefore, the statistics that I read yesterday says we have people coming here because of weather. Now, you and I, we watch the weather. We watch the weatherman, the weather girl on TV, and it's kind of amusing because they will make a forecast, they project for the week, and don't take it to the bank because the next day it changes, and they'll make the forecast for the rest of the week. Don't take it to the bank. The next day it changes, and it gets to be amusing. I would really like to visit the weather lab at a local TV station sometime and do a program with the weather people because they have all this high-tech equipment and the weather changes no matter what. Go
I
ahead.
know. What's neat though is the positive side of change is that if they say it's going to be hot all week, that's not necessarily true. Just like you're saying, the weather changes. Thank you, Jesus, because the way it could rain when we didn't expect rain. It could get cooler.
Mm-hmm.
So all that's good.
Well, way back when TV was new, the weatherman had a blackboard, literally a blackboard, and white chalk and an eraser. And he would begin, and it was always a he would begin to give the weather. This would be on national. I mean, that's what we had. We had the national weather guy, and then we had the local one. They used a blackboard and a piece of white chalk and an eraser, and they would draw a rough map of the United States, and then they would begin to show arrows with wind directions or where they draw circles where the temperature was going to be. And they did this on a daily basis. There was no long range forecast. It would be like, this is what the weather will be tomorrow. It wasn't what weather's going to be all this next week. They were very accurate, and they had very limited technology to work with. Their technology was just about one step beyond watching a woolly worm in the late summer to determine how severe the winter is going to be and that sort of thing, as the old timers used to do. So now we have all this high tech stuff, and it's hard for them to get the forecast correct. The weather is not something that man really controls. Nancy?
Oh, but here's your thing. Let me spit that out. No, here's a neat deal, folks. If you've got bad weather coming for your area, you can pray and you can ask your Heavenly Father to move the weather away around you, or that the weather won't be as bad as what's forecast. And you can ask that in faith believing, and it will be done, because I've done it so many times. So just because somebody that knows things about weather says that, that's fine. They can say that all they want to.
Our broadcast is very secular in nature, being the bucket list and things that you need to attend to. But once in a while, my little preacher gets her word in there, and we're thankful for that. We're very truly thankful for it. We need to be reminded that we don't live forever. That's for sure.
That's right.
And we need to be reminded that no matter how smart man may become and how much technology, there's always something else out there in this huge universe of universes. Back to this, some of the impact of the weather and so forth has caused rising insurance rates in some areas of the country. It's caused real estate to be more valuable because people moving in certain areas. Interestingly enough, because of weather, we've had some chaotic farming conditions. Bless their hearts, these farmers. When you drive up north, west of Springfield, you see rolling prairie, beautiful land. And when the height of the season, if the weather's been right for planting and growing crops, you'll see soybeans that are beautiful. You'll see corn that will rival the corn crops in Iowa, which is, really the corn state. And it's beautiful, but it all depends on weather. And you think about these farmers, they are really subject to the weather. They really are, as to being able to plant and being able to grow and being able to harvest. But so the weather and any changes in the weather. Now, folks, there's this debate. Do we have global warming or do we not? And so forth. I'm not into the debate. I just know I've lived long enough to see changes. Interestingly enough, when I was a kid growing up in north central Missouri, when we had snow, we really had snow. And it stayed on all winter. Well, that's not quite the same nowadays up there. And I remember when Springburg, USA, I would travel into this area, and there was a dramatic difference in the weather here and in the weather in my hometown. Not so much so anymore. So I don't know what the formula is. I'm not getting into all that. I just know that in my 86 years, I've seen a lot of weather changes. And weather changes can be hard on farmers. And if you go 2 or 3 years when it's chaotic farming conditions, you can be certain you're going to see the results in the prices in the grocery store. You will.
That's right.
A few years ago, I was counseling with a man who was suffering from depression, and he had several hundred acres of land, and he was running several hundred head of cattle. And there, at that particular time, pork prices were so low that hog farmers were looking for any excuse to get rid of hogs. That's how cheap they were for some reason. It had to do with weather and conditions and all that. Well, they made a comeback, obviously, but there's been a part of our country that's cattle country that the ranchers have been selling their cattle big time, selling them whatever they can get out of them because they can't feed them. I remember when we had the same thing happen in the dairy country, and dairy farmers were selling off their dairy cattle. All of this will show up then in prices in the supermarket. So we will also have, because of climate issues, we're having more and more emphasis on what they call green construction. And this isn't just for saving, but it also has to do with energy production. And energy production has been affected by people who have a climate concern. For instance, the oil industry has been affected. The natural gas industry has been affected. The automobile industry is being affected. More and more electric cars coming on. Now they're coming up with solar panels and many, many different innovations. And so now many commercial buildings are being built as green buildings. That is, they don't consume a lot of energy to maintain, et cetera. And now that's going into the housing market. And guess what it does? It increases the cost of building, whether it's a retail building, commercial building, or whether it's a home. So that if you're looking to buy a new home, let's say you're 40 years old, and you're thinking, well, when I'm 50, I'm going to buy a new home. 10 years from now, that home may be more expensive because of innovations involving the green environment. I mentioned earlier that temperature and weather has affected the movement of people where they want to live in the United States, and it affects home values, all these things. Also, on a very personal level, dear viewer, listener, pay attention. These climate things bring about more allergies and more bug bites.
Oh, I've got bug bites.
Well, you've experienced it just working in the yard, and we live in a civilized neighborhood. We're not out in the country, and the lawn is kept at the right length and so forth, and yet Nancy's more susceptible to those bug bites than I am. Some people seem to attract them, and other people don't. And same way with allergies. I have some allergies that I never had before. I waited till I was 86 to start having some allergies of this type. And there was one allergy I waited until I was 85 or 84, 85 to get. Now, I ate tomatoes all my life, loved tomatoes. And then I discovered I had a serious allergic reaction to anything with tomatoes. Can't eat them anymore. So with the seasonal changes, senior citizens 40 and beyond, watch out for more allergies and bug bites. And then, because believe it or not, when you're 40, you're not really in your prime. That happened back in your early 20s. You're more susceptible to a lot of things physical, including heat-related ailments. We've had some record high temperatures out west and in the northwest. In the area in the Seattle and Tacoma, Washington areas where our daughter lives, people are not known for having air conditioning in their homes. They didn't need it. They've had temperatures 110, 115, and at night it would cool down to 90, and with no air conditioning. So this takes a toll. people don't realize that health can be severely infected by heat and by cold.
Mhm.
So be aware of temperature changes, climate changes, whatever you want to call them, from age 40 on, especially. Be very, very careful. As we age, our physiological responses to hot temperatures, such as sweating, releasing heat through dilated blood vessels at the surface of the skin, and thirst, all of this diminishes as we age. Physiologically, our physiological responses to hot temperatures changes. So we want to be very, very, very careful. Well, Nancy, we are close to closing up time. We've had a good time. Hope you've had a good time. And so until next time, this is Paul and Nancy. We want to say, stay blessed. We'll see you next Monday.